Thank you. We're going to have a fantastic group of people come up. I'm going to invite each of them to come up separately. First, we have Jocelyn. Jocelyn Goldfein is Managing Director at Zeta Ventures. She makes early-stage investments in startups, especially AI startups. She was previously at Facebook, and I've been learning a lot about how these products become more and more human. Next up, we have Soumya Choka, who is the CTO, founder of Lily. And Lily is an emotional AI tool. It is in the App Store currently, so you can try it out at Lily. Next up, we have Rachel Sibley. Rachel is at Leap Motion, so a specialist in both interaction and in humanity and how cutting-edge technology can bring the best of humanity to life. She is also previously a dancer, and so has a very beautiful way of looking at gesture and human interface. Next, we have Mai Tran. Mai Tran is a world-renowned, award-winning, free-to-play game designer. She is co-founder and chief product officer at ADVR, and GameSauce has called her the maestro of monetization. She is focused on VR and AR monetization platforms. Excellent. And next, I'm sorry, I have to do this via my phone, everyone. Next up, we have Gary Martz, and Gary focuses on both the human side of AI and robotics, looking at interaction design. He spent much of his career at Intel and communications, but now looks at IoT and how IoT and IT fit together in systems. And last, we have Ashish Agarwal. Ashish leads early-stage investment in robotics, connected devices, AI ML, and frontier technologies at Grishin Robotics. So if you could please welcome our panelists. And thank you for making time to join us today. I'm going to ask you briefly, and we'll just go down the line, and maybe Jocelyn, if you can start, and we'll come this way. What I'd love you to do is just tell us a quick use case or a story that helps us understand both your work and the lens that you bring to reality craft in some form.
Well, I think, you know, when you asked this question, it made me think of my time at Facebook, actually, because, you know, as we all know, when we're creating, when we're inventing, when we're designing something brand new, it's easy to have really qualitative arguments about what's going to work, and, oh, that'll never work, or users will hate this. And one thing that was kind of an article of faith at Facebook, which was a very data-driven company, and I think is a really useful piece of DNA for any startup that's in one of these data-driven spaces, is to be kind of agnostic about what we think will be true, and instead to rely on, well, let's try it. And so, you know, at Facebook, even if you had an incredibly controversial or stupid or crazy sounding idea, sort of no one could disagree with, well, let's go run a test. Let's get some data. Let's see what the truth is. And, or let's at least be, even if we can't design a test that gives us some impartial notion of truth, let's at least all be more data informed. And so many things where you could just argue yourself to death and beat your head against the wall, you know, all of a sudden you surface a bunch of data and it's sort of like, oh, we can see a solution. We can see, you know, maybe not that one of us was right and one of us was wrong, but now we have a new idea because we're informed by how people really interact with something we're trying. And so that's kind of stuck with me, and I think that's really valuable in machine learning and AI as well, because whether you're feature engineering or trying to tackle a new problem that's been unsolved before, this idea of like, let me not presuppose that I know the answer. Let's try it and see, I think is always a useful tool.
If you want to just take that question down the line, come on.
Sure. So we at Lily are super focused on solving one problem, which is helping women find clothes that will technically flatter their body and make them feel their best. So this is at an intersection of both emotional intelligence and artificial intelligence. So we define emotion at Lily as the difference between the reality of what the user's body actually is and how they perceive themselves. The more negative this is, the user tends to get insecurities around their body, and the more positive it is, they generally have more confidence. So we are all about understanding, using AI as an enabler to understand this difference and try to push the user to the positive side and make them feel their best every day. And that's what we're focusing on.
My name is Rachel. At Leap Motion, we are focused on hand interaction in augmented and virtual reality. So that is applicable to many use cases, whether it's hands-on education and learning in the virtual world, or dissecting a cadaver in the virtual world, or training an astronaut to fly to space, as well as domains like entertainment and the gaming industry, which Mai will tell us a little bit more about. But I work specifically on our go-to-market efforts. I lead our product marketing to help make the unfamiliar feel exciting and delightful, launching new category products to market.
Hi, I'm Mai. As a game designer, priority is to keep things fun, because if it's not fun, good luck monetizing. So in VR and AR, it's a different medium, right? You can't just implement designs from, say mobile games into VR and AR. So a use case for me that opened my eyes was when I was watching my siblings play a VR game. They did not need any tutorials, they don't need any help, they were in a different world. And one of the things that stuck out to me was my sister, she picked up a hot dog off the floor and ate it in VR. And I'm like sitting here like, oh God, like why does anyone do that? But the cool thing was, since it's a virtual world, it unlocked new features for her, and crazy animations started playing. And to me, it's just, wow, how much creativity have we lost as we get older, and how much wonder have we lost? And in VR, it's important that, for anyone here, that when you try it out, do things that you would normally never do. Do things that you're not supposed to do, and see what happens, because again, it's completely virtual.
I'm Gary. In my career at Intel, I've had the opportunity to be exposed to a lot of different areas that we touch VR and AR, whether it's Intel Sports or whether it's smart home technology or in the retail vertical. Currently, I work in the standard space. So when all these great solutions come to market, my role and my job is to make sure that the solutions from various companies interact with solutions from everybody else in the ecosystem so that meaningful events can be orchestrated and are more automated and seamless for the users. My specific focus right now is more AR, VR, robotics, and AI in process automation. There's a lot of challenges, and this is a story that I was sharing with the panelists before we came up here. One of my colleagues was walking in through an oil refinery, and they walked through 3 badge access doors. They came to a closet that had a deadbolt and a padlock on it, and they opened those locks and they opened the door, and you could feel the cool air come out of this closet because it was air conditioned, because on the table in that closet by itself was a PC, a 486 PC that was 20 years old, running Windows XP, running a mission critical application for this refinery, and nobody's allowed to touch it, because if this PC goes down, it's going to cost tens of millions of dollars. And as we look at, we're talking about AI and we're talking about VR and augmented reality and all these great technical solutions and innovations, but the reality is we still have these environments, especially in traditional manufacturing, that we're still talking about equipment that's 20 years old.
Hi, my name is Ashish. I work for an early stage fund called Coalition Robotics. We are helping entrepreneurs in terms of finding and in innovative companies focused on robotics, connected devices, IoT, and frontier tech. One of the use cases that we always think about is the practical use case of the problem that an entrepreneur is trying to solve. For example, and there are definitely use cases, and a couple of things that I would like to mention is specifically on the consumer side, as you start thinking about how much time does a person spend on doing certain things, like for example, cooking versus driving versus cleaning versus something else. People have started building robots for automating parts of those things. Like for example, we have robots for cleaning. People are building self-driving cars so that we don't have to drive anymore. And the similar type of things exist also on the enterprise side. A lot of these things are driven by lack of access to resources. Like for example, currently there's a lack of labor in agriculture. And that's why you start seeing robots that are trying to basically pick apples. And and it's a massive problem that needs to be solved. But in terms of that, when you kind of like take a look at these things, that's what we try to help and understand what is the fundamental problem that somebody's trying to build and solve for.
So each of you are trying to improve our lives in different ways. And each of you has a different perspective on how reality craft and these experiments can build better lives. I am very curious about how you design to work better with humans with your technology, especially where does your work differ maybe from some of the others in your field, and how are you trying to make your technology more human or more accessible or effective for humans to interact?
I'll jump in real quick. One of the things we talk about at Leap Motion is that technology works best when technology disappears. Consider what it's like when you're reading a book and you're so engrossed that you don't even remember you're turning the pages or holding the book in your hand. That is technology at its best. And in virtual and augmented reality, we have a lot of issues before that experience is realized. We have user experience challenges like positional tracking to make sure people don't experience nausea, interaction challenges. I'm trying to push a button I can't even see while I'm wearing a headset. Those are the kinds of challenges that we are focused at our core on resolving, because we want to help people solve human problems and experience social interaction and delight and insight and access to fundamentally new experiences and understanding, as Mai discussed. And in order to do that, we have to design for the human experience. One concrete example, we created an interaction engine so that you can not have to code the physics every time you move to a different virtual world, but can actually use that tool set in order to develop the best interactions possible in the virtual world.
How else?
So the other way that we use, I would say, is like we have millions of products, and like for having a stylist, a human stylist, go over all of the products to find what are those top 2 pages of products that a user would like is just not possible with like changing context, changing, seasons and everything. So that's where we have AI like come in and like crunch millions of products and figure out what are the top recommendations for our user. At the same time, we make sure that, it's like, the interface is in a way that the user loves. Chatting with the AI, it's like a friend that you talk to, but at the same time, it is technology that you're actually interfacing with, which is able to deliver a higher quality of, or a faster time turnaround to your results.
I remember Gary and I, as we were getting ready for this panel, were talking about how humans are like weather systems. And sometimes these siloed forces end up in lightning storms like we saw last night. And so I'm very curious about what we do with those lightning storms and what happens when humans who are very unpredictable face technology which can be glitchy, right? So when you're looking at how do you design for trust, how do you begin to create standards or solutions or an ecosystem where trust works for your users?
Is that for me?
That's for you and anyone else who wants to.
I think our approach at Intel is, our business model is pretty clear, and we want to rapidly accelerate markets. We want to enable more sockets. We want to sell silicon. So as we approach these problems of designing for trust and look at these acceptance curves for new technologies out in the marketplace, we try and do this through standards and through massive industry collaboration. We like the idea of all the different competitors in a space coming together in a consortium, agreeing on the areas that we can standardize together, and then go out and compete and differentiate on top of that. And I think that that's the first step in solving this problem, is getting the industry to agree on these hard challenges and how we're going to approach it. And the alternative is everybody trying to solve it in a different way, and I think then you compound the problem, because each interaction a consumer or human would have with a system is going to be different from each particular brand that they may choose to purchase.
Right. The technology is changing so fast. And if you have to develop for instance, 4 different chatbots, Alexa, Home, Siri, and Cortana, every time you're doing a mixed reality app, it becomes a nightmare. And interactivity in general it's full of risk. It's scary. And in sometimes, especially in the AI space, the risks are extremely scary to the public. And so I'm curious about the edges of your field. Where are there scary parts? And then how do you begin to do the risk mitigation as you bring these technologies to market?
Well, I'll dive on that one. In some ways, I've been working in AI for nearly a decade now, and I think it's not a coincidence that AI really got its start and is now very, very dominant in consumer-facing areas. The project I worked on in 2010 was to bring machine learning to the Facebook newsfeed. So an AI-based system decides what order to put your posts in. And the nice thing about that, it has a good quality for AI problems, which is that if the ranker does a good job, and for me, a good job is you put the new baby announcement ahead of the cat photos, right? And if that happens, then everybody wins. I win because I see news that's important to me and I don't miss it. My friend wins because I get to congratulate her on the new baby. And Facebook wins because I spend more time and I'm more engaged. And that leads to more time on site and more ad revenue and to a stronger network. So, but importantly, there's not much downside if the ranker gets it wrong. If it puts the new baby announcement below the cat photo, I'll probably still see it. Or on the margin, things that I won't see at all will be things that weren't huge. So those are good sort of starting problems for AI, I think. And I think that when we jump straight to sort of self-driving cars or diagnosis of disease, those are in some ways not very easily tractable problem for AI because they're ones where the downsides of getting it wrong are catastrophic. And so as I see AI evolving, I think there's I see in my mind a really clear path for AI to follow where it keeps, as the compute gets cheaper, as the data sets get better and larger, as the algorithms become more refined, we're able to tackle incrementally more risk, incrementally more challenge. And so we might move from consumer problems like announcing baby photos to, even as we start to tackle the enterprise, again, to tackling problems where if we make it incrementally better, it's a win. If we get it a little wrong, it's not so bad. And so I think that's why we've seen in the early days of solving business problems with AI, we're seeing things like optimizing sales, optimizing marketing. And I think where it will be a long time before AI is ready is anything that involves human interaction. And I think some of the early or nascent efforts to throw AI at, well, instead of CCing a human being to take over a scheduling request, maybe I'll CC an AI, that hasn't worked out too well. I think it's TBD on using AIs for customer support or human conversation. I think there's places where AI can be very successful, but when it involves a nuance of social or emotional interaction, I think we're a long way still from AIs nailing it. Although perhaps with really good design, humans, I think one of the things that really won't work is for an AI to pretend to be a human. So I think we're far out from that being a success. So all in all, I think the key to working with AI is to sort of understand its strengths and its limitations and to sort of try to solve the right problems with it.
A few of you have mentioned how you are seeking to solve real problems using AI and paired programming. Ashish, you mentioned some of the other enterprise solutions in AI and robotics. What are some of the things you're most excited about?
So I think on the enterprise side, there are multiple solutions that people are focused on in terms of doing that. But I think just to add to what Jocelyn was saying, I think there are a couple of other things I would like to add and then answer your question. The first thing is kind of AI currently today is not powerful enough to kind of like remove biases. So like, how do you remove gender biases from because whoever is programming that AI have to remove those biases, and then there are critical questions of who is going to make the decision. Like for example, people are talking about building robots that can fight in wars, and how do you make decisions on what's right, what's wrong, and a lot of those ethical questions are not answered. And I think keeping that in mind in terms of problems that are currently being solved in enterprise are focused more on, there are two buckets. One is how do you increase my efficiency or reduce cost? Now on improving efficiency side, the focus is primarily on building better solutions. Like for example, if on the cross collaboration side, if I'm a remote worker and I'm working in a remote field and something is broken, normally I would have to basically take that and bring an expert to come on. But now with AR and VR, it's very easy for people to build those predictive solutions where you can just have a camera point to that, take a picture of it, and then a remote expert can log in from far and then provide a solution that makes it very easy to solve that problem on the spot. Whereas on the reducing cost side, companies like Amazon have built, they have pretty much automated their entire warehouses that have made their warehouses extremely efficient and reduces the cost. And that is an impact because then they can pass on those savings to the consumers, but at the same time, you start seeing that a lot of other retailers are not able to optimize because they are not technology companies. They are retailers trying to sell groceries. And that's where the problems comes in, where these technology companies started going into other markets, which has a direct impact on a lot of other, in general kind of larger companies on that side.
I liked what you were saying earlier about these technologies freeing us and how many of us seek to create tools that allow us to be more free so that we have our free time, so that we have our creative potential. And I see many of, especially the women on this panel, leading organizations, and you've put your creative potential to work by creating culture as well as product. And so I'm very curious, especially for the women on this panel, how have you designed your team or company to work effectively on some of the things that have challenged you as women in technology?
To start off, I think the basic insight of our product is why does a user or a woman like a product? And that's the thing that we extend to our company as well, questioning, like the why in what we do. And that has not only helped us build a strong solution to the problem that we are trying to solve, but also build a strong team, because we are always like, what is the metric that we are trying to move? Why are we trying to do this task? Constantly questioning it and trying to challenge ourselves within the team has really helped us build the product and build the team.
Before my time at Leap Motion, I was on the senior leadership team at IBM Design, scaling design thinking across IBM's very, very large organization. And we found great power in placing emphasis back on the people that we were solving for. If you can get your engineers, your product teams, your sales teams all to really understand a user persona, not just as a user persona, but as someone that they know, that they can relate to, suddenly you have a much stronger drive to fix that problem. And so those simple paradigm shifts can be deeply impactful, not only for team productivity, but also for effectiveness and engagement overall.
For us, VR and AR is so new, and we're literally on the cutting edge of technology, right? Like some things will be released tomorrow, and we're like, oh, cool, solutions just came out. So for us, what I embed in my team and my company is you have to play test and QA everything that you build, and not just your own, but what the other teammates are working on. Because it's just, if it sucks for a person to use VR and AR, well, good luck, right? Because they're going through so many other hurdles that us and our platform can't be adding on top of that. So it's important that, you have to play test, you have to QA everything that you do, and that's just the bottom line, right? We do the hard work so that you don't have to.
I liked how you put that. When we do reality craft, whether it's in AI, or in robotics, in VR, on a mobile app, the creativity that goes into creating an ecosystem often involves working on system challenges. So earlier Gary was talking a little bit about the silos that happen within organizations, often internally, but also externally, that become barriers to collaboration. And each of us are trying in some form to help people be better at collaboration. So I want to hear from each of you. We have 5 minutes left. So what do you think is missing in this ecosystem now? And how can this room support you to fill in those gaps?
I can start. I think what's missing in the VR and AR space is you. Have you tried VR? If you have, do it again, right? Like keep experimenting with it, keep trying it out, because it takes you know, learning about it, learning how it works, understanding all the capabilities and all the things that it can do so that you can confidently go back to your industry and incorporate VR and AR into your workflow or adding new dimensions to your products. And it comes from you understanding and trying things out and, oh yeah, I didn't know I could do this. And like, oh cool, I can incorporate this into what I do.
I would like to add that, you know, we are actually running out of engineers who can work on this problem. We've been challenged that, hey, where's the PhD on your team? But I don't think really it matters whether you have a PhD or not. If you're super excited about the problem, and with the way deep learning and everything has advanced now, it's been more easy to adopt these technologies to the problem that we're trying to solve for. So finding more engineers who are super psyched to like work in this field is another challenge that we're trying to tackle and try to get more people on.
Well, I'll echo that. I think that by far the bottleneck on greater adoption of AI is talented people, that the compute is cheap, data is abundant, the algorithms are out there, you know, to be used, and we're missing experts who want to put them to work. But I'll say that, you know, I think it's always been true in technology that the best founding teams, the best startup teams have a mixture of both technology expertise to invent something new, but domain expertise to really understand the problem that you're tackling. I think in AI that's exponentially true. That we need deep experts in this is somewhat obscure new field more than ever, but we also need people who deeply understand the domain, because what's enabling the breakthroughs in AI is not more better algorithms. The breakthrough algorithms were invented 30 years ago. Partly it's that the compute is cheap, but mostly it's that we're starting to have data sets that let us really deeply understand and apply algorithms to a problem or to a domain. And so those data sets come from people who deeply understand the problem. And so I would say we need both sides, the domain and the technology, and we especially need people who bridge the two. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if I can add that I just don't think we found the sweet spot yet. Whether it's VR or AR, I know when we look at Intel Sports Solutions and we can ring stadiums with 5K cameras and create volumetric pixels and allow a consumer to rewatch a game from anywhere in the stadium they want, and we can enhance that experience by having them put on a headset and allow them to look around and really give them the experience like, hey, I'm in the stadium and it feels real, but you're putting on a big clunky headset and you're losing the interaction with the other human that's sitting next to you in the same room. So for me, we're not at that sweet spot yet. We're not at the sweet spot with the equipment, and we're not at the sweet spot of the balance between VR and AR to truly give the consumer what they want.
I think one of the things that I would like to add is if you look into like advances in any of these industries like robotics, AR, VR, the fundamental technologies behind that kind of like there have been advances in the past 2 or 3 decades in terms of like mathematics, physics, compute, like network resources, as well as like understanding of psychology and all of these things, which have combined together in terms of like advancing robotics, AI, ML today. So the time is right in terms of like the cost of building a company at this instant has come down tremendously. So that's why at least we like to encourage people to think about like, hey, building a robot is not that hard anymore. So if you have an idea, it's very easy to go from your idea to a prototype. And given the access to accelerator programs and hardware accelerator programs specifically in the Bay Area, it's fairly easy for anybody to build a hardware product on that side. And then if those becomes easier, then you can do a crowdfunding campaign and use your 3D printing skills to print out the first MVP. And then if there is a higher demand from your crowdfunding campaign, then it's very easy for you to fly to China. Supply chains are extremely efficient, and then you can very quickly get the hardware side of your business going. And then and people use hardware either to kind of collect data or to kind of provide a user experience. And then whatever data you're gathering, because of AWS, compute network and storage resources are really cheap, you can run all of these algorithms on that and AI, ML, and generate a lot of insights, and then combine these business models to generate and create new types of industry, like new type of companies to disrupt existing industries on that side. So would highly recommend to kind of like think about how your idea can kind of be proven and gone to market in a very easy fashion.
Well, with both data and tools, go for it.
I'm going to go a little big on this one and ask a quick audience question. Who here knows or loves someone who is currently being educated in the education system? Like, raise of hands, really, guys. Okay, so most of us, right? When I look at most of the problem spaces right now, what strikes me is that we have a proliferation of complex systems problems in systems with emergent properties. And we don't actually, like, what do those words even mean? A complex systems problem? What is that? We don't teach our kids and ourselves how to engage those kinds of problems. And those kinds of problems are all over right now. We've got them in climate, we've got them in the political domain, we've got them in these new technological ecosystems. We need ways to encounter and engage productively with complex systems problems. And AI is going to help us, but we have to start building that into our educational systems, because only then are we going to have the talent that we need to solve these problems.
Absolutely.
So
And
that would
to
be my
our-
call to action for all of you.
That's
Educate yourself in that.
Great way to wrap up, Rachel. Thank you so much to all of our panelists. Thank you.